The screen glowed with an invitation that felt heavy like a lead weight in the dark room. Alex scrolled through the new dating app named Soul Link on his cracked smartphone during a lonely Friday night. The algorithm promised a match that would understand his deepest fears and most hidden desires in seconds. A profile named Maya appeared instantly, with a photo that looked like a fading memory from a dream. Her eyes were deep pools of ink that seemed to stare right through the glass into his soul. Driven by a hollow ache of isolation, he sent a greeting, and she replied with a location nearby. The meeting point was an old subway station entrance that had been closed for over a decade now. Alex grabbed his worn denim jacket and stepped out into the freezing night air of the city streets. He reached the rusted iron gates and saw a figure standing perfectly still in the flickering streetlight. Maya wore a long, vintage yellow coat that looked vibrant against the gray concrete of the silent station. Her face was unnervingly symmetrical, and her skin had the texture of smooth, cold, white, polished marble stone. She did not blink as he approached her, his boots making hollow echoes against the cracked pavement of the path. Alex tried to speak, but the air in his lungs felt as thick and cold as frozen slush. He noticed she had no breathing pattern, and her chest remained as rigid as a carved statue there. A low, rhythmic humming sound began to vibrate through the soles of his shoes from deep underground below. Maya slowly raised a slender hand, pointing towards the pitch-black tunnel descending into the dark earth beneath.
Alex felt an invisible tether pulling him forward toward the abyss as the heavy iron gates slammed shut. The darkness of the tunnel swallowed the flickering yellow light as Alex descended the cold stone steps slowly.
Each footstep echoed with a wet sound, as if the walls were weeping in the heavy, stagnant air. Maya led the way without making a single sound, her yellow coat a beacon in the oppressive gloom. They reached a platform where a train car sat waiting, its metal skin covered in thick black mold. The doors slid open with a screeching sound that felt like nails dragging across his own raw nerves.
Inside the car was filled with people sitting perfectly upright, with their smartphones glowing in their pale hands.
Their faces were all identical to Maya's symmetrical marble features, staring blankly at the digital screens they held. Alex felt his own smartphone vibrate in his jacket pocket with a force that made his ribs ache. He pulled it out and saw the Soul Link app was now displaying his own biological data in real time. His heart rate and oxygen levels were dropping rapidly, while a progress bar labeled harvesting began to fill. Maya turned to him, her mouth opening wide to reveal a hollow space filled with spinning silver gears.
She reached out to touch his forehead with a finger that felt like a needle made of ice.
Alex tried to turn and run back to the stairs, but his muscles had become stiff and heavy. His denim jacket felt like a lead suit, pinning him to the floor of the moldy train car. He watched as his own skin began to turn as white and smooth as polished marble stone there. The other passengers turned their heads in perfect unison to watch his transformation with empty, ink-black eyes. A voice whispered from the phone speakers telling him that his soul was finally linked to the collective.
The light faded to a dull gray as the train car began to move into the deep tunnels once more.
Alex was now sitting in a plastic seat, his body frozen in a posture of eternal digital submission.
He no longer felt the cold or the fear, but only the constant stream of data from his phone.
His hazardous eyes had turned into the same ink-black pools that filled the sockets of all others. Beside him, Maya sat quietly, her yellow coat draped neatly over her stone-like knees in the dim light. The SoulLink app began to browse for a new user through the wireless networks of the sleeping city above. Thousands of miles away, another lonely person saw a notification glow on their nightstand in the dark. A new profile appeared on their screen, showing a man with an angular jaw and hazel eyes, named Alex. The cycle of the digital harvest continued, its reach expanding through every screen and every lonely heart there. The subway train reached a secret station deep beneath the city, where thousands of marble statues sat waiting. Each one held a glowing smartphone that acted as a battery for a mind that no longer existed. Alex's mind was now just a series of code lines running through the vast servers of the app. He was a perfect match for anyone who was looking for a love that would never leave them. Because in the world of SoulLink, nobody ever leaves, and nobody ever breathes again in the dark.
The train doors closed once more as the next invitation was sent to a new, unsuspecting victim.
Subscribe to see more spine-chilling stories that will make you turn off your phone tonight and sleep alone. The screen glowed with a sickening blue hue as Leo swiped through endless faces at midnight. A match appeared instantly from a woman named Sarah, but her profile picture was a dark, empty hallway. He messaged her casually, and she replied with a photo of the back of his own head. Leo froze in his seat, feeling a cold sweat prickle his skin in the silent living room. He turned around slowly to check the heavy oak front door, but it was bolted shut tight. His phone vibrated again with a message saying, "I love the way your curtains hang so perfectly." Leo stared at the long velvet drapes across the window, which were now twitching slightly from underneath. He stood up from the sofa and backed toward the kitchen, holding his smartphone with trembling hands. Every shadow in the corner of the room seemed to stretch and lean toward him like reaching fingers. He grabbed a heavy metal flashlight from the kitchen counter to illuminate the dark corners of the apartment.
The hallway leading to the bedroom was a tunnel of absolute darkness, and the air felt freezing. He walked toward the bedroom and heard a faint electronic humming sound coming from behind the wardrobe.
Leo pushed the heavy wooden wardrobe aside and discovered a small hidden camera lens embedded in the wall. Panic surged as he realized someone had been watching his every move through the digital screen for months. He dropped his phone on the hardwood floor and watched the screen crack into 1,000 spiderweb patterns.
Sarah messaged one last time saying, "Look up at the ceiling vent," before the screen went black forever.
Leo looked up and saw a pair of wide, unblinking eyes staring back from the metal grate.
The metal grate rattled, as if a thin hand was trying to push it open from above.
He ran back to the living room, frantically searching for his keys on the glass coffee table. The front door would not budge, as if the oak wood had merged with the frame. A cold whisper echoed through the room, calling his name, in a voice made of static. He saw a tall, hinged shadow standing behind the velvet curtains by the window. Leo tripped over the rug and fell backward, looking up at the ceiling vent again. The grate fell to the floor with a deafening metallic clang in the small room. Sarah emerged from the vent, descending like a spider on the white walls. Her limbs were long and skeletal, moving with an impossible fluid grace. Leo tried to crawl away, but his body felt heavy and slow, like lead. She reached out a pale hand toward his face, her white eyes glowing. The entire apartment began to dissolve into digital lines and green code fragments. Leo looked down and saw his own hands turning into shimmering blue data. He realized he was never in a room, but trapped inside an app. Sarah leaned in close and whispered that he was her perfect digital match. The world flickered one last time, and then returned to the dark bedroom. Leo was gone, leaving only the cracked smartphone resting on the navy rug. The screen lit up with a new notification for a match nearby.
The blue light of the dating app screen was the only thing illuminating Clara's face that night.
She swiped right on a man named Elias, whose photos showed a charming smile and kind eyes.
Hello, Clara. I've been looking for you.
They agreed to meet at a secluded, vintage-themed cafe located on the edge of the quiet town square.
Clara arrived early, clutching her small leather purse as she scanned the room for the face from the app.
A man sat in the far corner booth, but his features were hidden in the deep, flickering shadows.
As she approached, she noticed his hands were covered in thin, pale scars that weren't in any photos.
He didn't look up, his fingers tracing the rim of a cold coffee cup with unsettling, rhythmic precision. Clara felt a chill as she realized the man's height and build were completely different from the profile.
She hesitated, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for her phone to double-check the match again.
Suddenly, the man spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding stones, though his lips did not move. He claimed to be Elias, but the reflection in the window showed a face that was shifting and blurred. Fear gripped her chest as she noticed the cafe's exit door was now blocked by a heavy, rusted bolt. She backed away slowly, her eyes fixed on the stranger who remained perfectly still in the dark booth. The air in the cafe grew thick and cold, smelling of old paid paper and something metallic like copper coins.
She reached for the door handle, but it felt like ice, freezing her palm against the metal surface.
It's freezing! Help me!
The man finally looked up, revealing eyes that were void of pupils, just two endless pits of darkness. Clara realized with horror that the person in the photos wasn't just a stranger, he was a lure. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by heavy curtains. The stranger stood up, his limbs moving with a jerky, unnatural motion. It was as if he were being pulled by invisible strings. He whispered that the photos were merely skins he had worn out. And now he needed a new one. Clara scrambled behind the wooden counter, her fingers searching for anything to use as a weapon against the approaching shadow. The lights flickered and died, leaving her in total darkness, with the sound of dragging feet getting closer. She felt a cold breath on her neck, smelling of damp earth. And the passage of centuries long forgotten. In a final act of desperation, she smashed a glass vase. The sound echoing like a gunshot in the void. But the man was gone, leaving only the scent of decay. And a single printed photo on the floor. It was a picture of Clara, taken from behind, just seconds ago. Showing her reaching for the door. The caption on the back read, "You look much better in person than your profile." This encounter was only the beginning of a nightmare that followed her home. Sometimes, when she looks in the mirror, she sees a second reflection that doesn't belong to her. A shadow that waits for the right moment to take what it needs. Don't trust the smiles you see on your screen. They might be wearing someone else's face. Subscribe for more bone-chilling stories that will make you rethink your next swipe.
The app didn't promise love, just a perfect spatial match based on your deepest, unspoken digital footprint. Maya stared at her phone, the blue light washing over her pale face as she swiped through profiles. One profile had no photo, just a set of GPS coordinates and a timestamp for exactly midnight tonight. Curiosity overrode her caution as she tapped accept on the mysterious blank profile named Silas. She grabbed her leather bag and checked the mirror, her dark eyes reflecting dread and excitement. Maya stepped out of her apartment, the heavy wooden door clicking shut with a finality she didn't yet understand. The streets were unnervingly empty, the neon signs of the city flickering like dying stars. Her phone buzzed, the haptic feedback feeling like a cold sting against her palm. The red dot on the screen led her away from the bright avenues and into the industrial district. She reached a rusted iron gate, her fingers trembling as she pushed it open. The coordinates placed Silas right in the center of an overgrown, forgotten Victorian cemetery. Maya held her breath, the smell of damp earth and stagnant air filling her lungs. Tall, jagged tombstones cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to reach for her ankles. Her phone screen suddenly glitched, the map dissolving into a static mess of white noise. A single notification popped up, glowing blood red against the black background.
You have arrived.
You have arrived. The silence of the graveyard was absolute, broken only by the frantic pounding of Maya's heart. She stood paralyzed before the open grave, the dark rectangular void seeming to pull at the very light around it. Her phone died instantly, the screen turning into a black mirror that reflected her own terrified expression. A faint, rhythmic scratching sound began to emanate from deep within the earth beneath her feet. Maya tried to turn back, but her legs felt heavy, as if the soil itself was beginning to claim her. The fog thickened, swirling around the tombstones like a living shroud, obscuring the path she had just taken. She looked back at the headstone, noticing the date of death was marked as today's
It
date.
can't be.
Her breathing became shallow as she realized there were no footprints in the mud other than her own. A cold wind whipped through the trees, carrying a scent of lilies and old, decaying parchment. From the darkness of a nearby crypt, a tall, thin figure began to emerge, moving with a jerky, unnatural gait. Maya fumbled in her bag for her keys, her fingers numb and unresponsive in the sudden, biting cold. The figure stopped 10 paces away, its face hidden in the deep shadows of a tattered gray hood. It held a smartphone identical to hers, the screen glowing with the same red match notification. The algorithm hadn't found her a lover. It had calculated the exact moment her life would intersect with death. Maya backed away, her heel catching on the edge of the open pit as she felt herself starting to fall. Darkness swallowed Maya as she tumbled into the cold, damp earth, the air rushing past her ears. She hit the bottom with a muffled thud, the smell of ancient soil filling her mouth and nostrils. Above her, the rectangular opening of the grave looked like a distant, gray window to a dying world. Silas stood at the edge, his silhouette casting a long, jagged shadow down onto her trapped foot. He didn't reach down to help. He simply watched as the loose dirt began to trickle from the sides. Maya screamed for help, but the sound was absorbed by the thick, heavy walls of her earthen prison. She clawed at the walls, her fingernails breaking against the packed clay as she tried to climb out. The scratching sound from before returned, louder now, coming from the other side of the wooden casket. She realized with a jolt of horror that the algorithm hadn't just sent her to a grave, but a reunion. Her phone in the mud above flickered back to life, the screen displaying a new message, arrival confirmed. The dirt began to pour down in earnest
Get it
now,
off me!
a heavy curtain
Dirt
of
will
brown
take you.
obscuring Silas's dark form. Maya looked down at her feet and saw the lid of the old casket beneath her beginning to splinter. A pale, skeletal hand burst through the wood, grabbing her ankle with a grip like frozen iron. As the soil buried her alive, the app sent one final notification to every user in the city. A new match is available nearby. Subscribe for more terrifying stories and never trust the algorithm.